Like me to take it away?
Yes, Ms. Irwin, Director,
Okay.
Auditor.
Welcome to this is the Office of Budget and Finances operating budget and hearing. And I have Marie Jeng from my office who's going to present our analysis.
Good afternoon. The operating budget highlights for the Office of Budget and Finance entities that are discussed in this package, which include the Office of Budget and Finance, Retirement, Insurance, Vehicle Operations and Maintenance, Emergency Communications, and Property Management, begin on page 2. As shown in the budget summary at the top of page 2, the proposed fiscal year 2026 operating budget for these programs totals $537 million, an increase of $28 million, or 5% over the fiscal year 2025 budget. The general fund portion of the budget totals $41 million, or 8.5% over the fiscal year 2025 budget, primarily due to increases in the county's contribution to the employees' retirement system and rising active employee healthcare costs. The shift of over $10 million in teacher pension costs from the state to the county also contributes to this increase. The special fund portion of the budget totals $12 million and decreases by $13 million, or 53%, due to the anticipated reduction of both the Community Reinvestment and Repair Fund grant and the Maryland 911 Board Reimbursement grant. Noteworthy highlights on pages 3 through 5 include a total annual required contribution to the employees' retirement system of $219.8 million, an increase of $20.5 million, or 10.3% over last year's contribution, primarily due to recent salary enhancements. An update on the financial condition of the retirement system, which had a funded status of 58.2% as of July 1st, 2024, and details of the countywide OPEB contribution of $137 million, which is equal to the estimated retiree PAYGO cost for fiscal year 2026. At the bottom of page 5, ARPA highlights and equipment financing highlights are mentioned, which include $2.6 million to replace 9 vehicles and 14 pieces of equipment for use by property management. Continuing on to pages 6 through 9, we have exhibits displaying various aspects of the budget history for these agencies, as well as the proposed funding allocations. On page 9, exhibit 3 shows the budgeted increases and decreases in these agencies, with retirement in blue, insurance in red, property management in purple, the Office of Budget and Finance in green, and 911 in yellow. On page 10, the analysis notes the areas within these budgets that may reflect agency-specific budget flexibility in an effort to provide insight into the operational context for any potential reductions. Finally, we have prepared a list of questions for the Office of Budget and Finance, which we are hoping can be discussed today or addressed with a written response. I would like to thank Director Reed and the Office of Budget and Finance staff for their assistance during this budget review process. And at this time, I would like to turn it over for discussion.
Any questions from the members? Questions from the auditor? Other than the ones you already gave them? All right. Director Reed, you want to continue?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, council members. It is a pleasure being here today to present to you on some of all the great things that OBF does and address some of the items in this package, and also to talk about kind of our budget holistically and not just our office. And, you know, as you know, formulating and operating a capital budget of this size, you know, it's not an easy task. We are in the midst of challenging and uncertain times, and I've been in this field for over 2 decades, and there never seems to be enough dollars to go around. And over this past winter, the administration has been transparent and open with the challenges that we have faced when formulating this budget in our discussions with our internal and external partners and the public during our town halls. And what we have submitted to council is a responsible, balanced budget that holds the line on taxes and conforms with the parameters that have been outlined by the Spending Affordability Committee. And it maintains a fund balance that will buffer us from near-term uncertainties with the state and federal government. And on this hearing, although not many are panelists, I know they're listening in and we can call on them. I have all of my direct reports and various subject matter with experts with me. And I want to say that, and take a few minutes to say that, you know, in OBF, I have some of the best public finance professionals in the country. And I'm truly honored to serve alongside with them every day in this capacity. And it really is an honor, as I know all of you share, that to serve the community in which you live. And I like to say we're the best, and it's not just because I feel like that or want to feel like that. It's evidenced in the outcomes that we have been able to provide the residents of Baltimore County. And I want to just highlight some of those real quick because I don't think we do that quite enough. And I'll start with finance of the budget and finance. We'll work backwards. On that side, some of the outcomes when we hear from our external auditors that out of all of their nationwide clients, that Baltimore County really has it together, unmatched from a financial standpoint, that's unmatched by their other clients. This makes us proud. It's great for us to hear. But then the fact that this is backed up with that we have certified clean financial statements year after year is really the outcome. We have received our Certificate of Achievement and Excellence in both budgeting and financial reporting year after year as well since I believe the 70s, and have also achieved in FY25 a 70% decrease in our single audit findings. And our single audit, that's an important measure on how we manage federal funds as an enterprise and also makes us available and competitive for federal funds in the future. These financial statements, also known as our Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, or ACFR, has also been submitted timely last year after years of delayed submissions due to staffing constraints. And our accounting team has done all of this while managing approximately $315 million additional dollars in federal funds from CARES and ARPA, in which the audits are ongoing from external auditors that has been hired by the U.S. Treasury and now the U.S. Treasury itself. And thus far in those audits and those reviews, we have done very well. On the budget side of the house, in Treasury, and this will kind of dip into a little bit what we talk about, in debt service, we were proud in FY25 that we issued nearly $400 million in refunding bonds, generating a net present value savings to taxpayers of $20 million in some complex refunding deals. And the team ensures that the rapidity of debt repayment on new net supported tax debt does not fall below 25% retired in 5 years and 50% retired in 10 years. And as of June 30th, we estimate, excluding pension funding bonds, that the county will retire 41.2 of currently outstanding debt in 5 years and 71.7. And we continue to monitor this, especially the rapidity of debt repayment, to ensure we do not fall below the rule of thumb used by credit analysts of 25% retired in 5 years and 50% in 10 years. On the employee benefits front, I want to take a moment to talk about some of the employee health and wellness that we have. We opened, as you know, a first in its kind employee health center at 305 Washington Avenue in Towson this past fall. And we urge our county employees, this is open to county employees and BCPS and CCBC active employees, to take advantage of these free services. They offer primary and urgent care services. They provide convenient care regardless of the insurance you carry, or if you have insurance with the county or the systems or not. If you need to go there for outside blood work, for your physicians, you could do it right there. You don't have to go to an external facility, and they'll get it right to your doctor. They provide vaccinations and other testing. And there is also an on-site wellness coach who can provide access and further linkage of care to other services like dietitians and other specialists. And again, this is a free service to our employees and our component units, and has actually generated a savings of $150,000 in avoidance costs to our health plans in the first 4 months of operation. And again, I said during the opening, a healthier workforce is a productive one. So definitely have everyone check that out. We would love to have everyone utilize that to its fullest extent. On the budget formulation side, this is what the crux of this hearing, right? So we have up here in budget formulation 10 budget management analysts that have been hard at work providing the accurate analysis, implementation, and management of our operating and capital budgets. And as of yesterday, the team has responded to 1,328 questions and inquiries and requests for additional data from the council's audit staff that have been requested from OBF and our accounting agencies over this last month of review. And we have done our best to provide timely and accurate information. And as we moved out of this adopted phase, this for 26, the team will be hard at work at what we call the budget trifecta, in which these 10 folks will be working on 3 fiscal years at once. And that's a successful closeout of FY25, the operational implementation and management of FY26, and the planning for FY27. And finally, when we talk about outcomes, on top of clean audits and all these great things, our team has maintained our AAA bond rating with stable outlooks from all 3 rating agencies. And we were just rated later in this winter. And we are one of the top 2% of counties nationwide to receive this distinction. And, as I'm sure we've all heard by now, that the state of Maryland was just downgraded by Moody's Investor Services to a AA1. This follows recent downgrades to Baltimore City's water system and Washington, D.C. And part of the action by Moody's on the state was their concern about, obviously, the federal landscape, but also that they mentioned the state's reserves. And that although the state's reserves, and this is their quote, remain strong by historical standards, they are lower than other AAA rated states. And this is kind of what we face as an organization too. So part of the strategy for FY26 was driving up those reserves because we heard from the rating agencies that they are looking at it. And although we retain a strong fund balance, and it is higher than our recommended target, and for a budget our size, that is a lot of cash, we will ultimately be judged and rated as a percentage on how we compare to those other AAA local jurisdictions. So now's the time to continue what we have been doing, moving through good financial practices, not adding ongoing costs to one-time revenues, continuing to drive up and maintain hardy funds balance levels, stabilizing out-year costs, and working together to remain flexible if the need comes that we need to course correct mid-year. So in closing, I'm blessed to be a part of this team, and we're always excited to deliver these results. Credit needs to be given to the council as well, as you and our legislative partners for your support and partnership and enable us to achieve these outcomes. And, I did want to highlight a few things that is mentioned in the county auditor's package. And one area talks about budget flexibility on page 11, especially in relation to our health insurance fund. And if you read the analysis, it has a potential reduction or transfer amount of $30 million recommended in this fund. And I want to say that I do not agree with these figures. I think that it is not a wise practice to look at projections in a future year and make decisions on this current year. I also want to point out that although one fund may draw a surplus, that in our financial statements, all of our self-insurance funds are combined into one. And if you read note 1 of our financial statements, and they're all online over the last few years, that we have drawn a deficit in those funds that we are slowly working our way out of. And that's a good thing. And this is part of that strategy because, again, these are all combined into one. And I want to say that when Moody's looks at us, so we have the issue with the financial statements that in the note on page 36, but also that Moody's rates all of our fund balances and they lump them into one, not just what we carry in our undesignated and unreserved fund balance. So any reduction to any self-insurance fund will ultimately drag on how they view and rate the enterprise as a whole. So I did want to mention that. And we also have to account for claims incurred but not recorded, the IBNR that you see right there, the 25 million. I want to spend a few minutes talking about what I know has been of interest is our retirement system and our funded status. We, obviously the auditor did note, and we've talked about it. We did have a slight drop in our funded status of the retirement system to 58.2%. And, the reason the board, the retirement system is managed by the board of trustees. And the board has chosen a 5-year smoothing, and the 5-year smoothing needs to beat the 6 3/8 discount or actuarially assumed rate. And if you look at over the last 5 fiscal years, and I can read the returns and it'll show you where the issue is. In 2020, we had a 0.3% return market value. 2021, the system had a 27.7 return. It was a great year. FY22, we had a negative 10.3, in FY23, a 7% return, and in FY24, a 9.8% return. So when you add all of those up, that actuarial valuation is slightly shy those 5 years when added, based on the actuarial discount rate. And so really FY22 is the year that, as we keep moving into time, and if the system keeps performing, we should be able to work that out. And again, we'll start seeing the funding status improve. I will say that this first quarter of the fiscal year, as interesting as the market has been, I think we've returned a 4.3% return. So that is kind of an interesting, it's a good position. We're interested to see where this next month and a half will lead us, and then ultimately we'll lock in for FY25. But I also wanted to mention, as the council's aware, because they passed a contract, that the board did want to take a fresh look at our returns, our investment mix, and the whole thing, because and it's no secret that the returns in the system have been lagging behind our peers. But it's also the fact that we've chosen a more conservative discount rate that shows that the funded status is pushes us to do better. And it's a three-legged stool on how we fund it: employer contributions, employee contributions, and then finally the investment income. So as the council approved the contract, we are moving away from our investment advisor that we had for many years, and we're taking a fresh look with Wilshire. They're a big name in the business. They do a lot of very large and medium scale pension systems, and they are going to kind of really do a deep dive with the retirement board and take a look at the mixes and what they can do to improve these returns going forward. So I think this is a good year to reset, and we look forward to that as we move on. I think the auditor mentioned the next experience study, and we will do an experience study. Our actuaries will, on the retirement system, that'll cover the period FY21 through FY26, and that'll be in FY27, and that'll show has the assumptions that have been made by the actuary, how have they come to fruition. There was a reference to the communication and the importance of the ERS funding status and labor negotiations, and that's something that we have been very open with our labor partners, and they're very tuned in. We also have partners in labor on our retirement board, and the council has seats as well. And as we discussed at the work session on Tuesday, that the administration's stance, because of this funding status and because it makes sense, that any change, substantial change to the retirement system put forth by the administration must be cost neutral to the system in the form of increased contributions by the member, not the system. So that is, if you see anything come through for the administration, that is going to be our stance going forward, because in light of this funding status, that really is the prudent thing to do. I think those are some of the areas I wanted to highlight. I'm happy to address any other questions if you all have them.
Any questions from the members? Councilman Jones.
Yes, Director Reed.
Uh-oh.
Director Reed.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you and your team for doing an outstanding job. I personally want to thank you for all the time you have spent with me explaining things that when I have a question, and when people have come to me with issues or concerns, that you've made yourself available to me to explain it and put it in a way that I could understand. And you've just been extremely responsive. And, when we look at the state just losing their AAA bond rating, it gets one more testament to your leadership and your team's leadership and the strength of Baltimore County, which I think continues to serve us well. So thank you so much for doing a great job. Congratulations to you and your team, and keep up the great work. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate that.
Any other? Councilman Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Reed also wanted to jump on board with Councilman Jones. Appreciate your team's work during the budgeting process, especially when, as the chair of spending affordability, working with you all to get to a point that you all were in a good spot, and so were we in terms of our blending of our averages and what we expected to be a reasonable and responsible increase in our debt limit and spending this year. So I appreciate you guys' work on that and explaining everything to us and to the other members of the committee. You did mention the AAA bond rating. It was tough to see that yesterday in terms of the state losing it, serving on appropriations for 8 years, knowing the impact that it's going to have on long-term spending for the state. It's going to have fluctuations for years to come. So being able to keep it at a AAA bond rating for us is imperative. I guess I wanted to ask, is you as the expert and the one that's looking at these numbers, getting of multiple things you were mentioning about what keeps it a AAA bond rating. One of those things is it's certainty, right? Like there's a level, they want a level of certainty. They're looking at other jurisdictions. We're in comparison from the other counties that are AAA bond rated. So when they're also making this determination, there's things we can control, things we can't, or things we don't think about, but they're looking at, right? Could you kind of help us with that, like when it comes to that certainty piece about the budgeting process?
Sure. It's a great question, Councilman. A couple of things they look at, the economy. Again, in Maryland, for Baltimore County, we have a fairly stable economy that's not reliant on, things like, heavily on tourism or one particular area over the other. They look at the past practices and the financial management, as Moody's notes, our strong commitment to conservative budget practices that helps. They also look at unfunded liabilities. I mean, they look at our pension system, they look at our OPEB, they look at the self-insurance funds, which I just mentioned, in our Metro Fund, all combined into one total. And I think we, over the last few years, this administration prior, obviously, we have really been able to put mechanisms in place to address some of those long-term liabilities, and moving forward, being very serious, as we talked about in the town halls, that we have these liabilities grow every year of up to $65 million a year in pension, fringe costs, retiree healthcare, all of the debt service, all of those things that are not really fun and cool, but things that have to be funded. And that's what we really, we have plans to continue to move forward in that right direction. And I think they've recognized that. But to your point, another thing that they're really hammering us on is the fund balance that we carry. And although it's hardy next year, and Moody's says that they feel a 15% fund balance is where we should be. And we go back to them and say, well, our target is 10. And, we're not going to, in future years, we will be down to 10, based on projections that we have. But that's a decision that we made with with you all and the administration in 2018 to move that from 5 to 10. Who we're compared against, and we're, some of them carry 25 or 30%, but they have very little budgets and they're very reliant on some corner of the economy that as fluctuates very heavily. So we try to tell the unique Baltimore County story on why we are special, unique, buffered, and we did that again this year, and we will continue to do that. But the state, the recent action that came out from the state tells me that they are really zoomed in on that fund balance, and that's something that I really want to work towards and look at as we continue to move forward and approve budgets. So I hope that answers some things we're looking at.
It does. It just reminded me too, I guess, you had mentioned budget processes, and they're looking at our way of fashioning our budget, from the administration putting forth its budget, from working with our partners at BCPS, from working with our other departments, and then it coming to us. That certainty piece and that evaluation of our budget practices and policies are really reflective of us working together to come to a decision, not arbitrarily, but based on working together on actual numbers and actual reasoning for why we make a determination when it comes to adding or subtracting money from the budget, correct?
Correct, and it's based on data, and it's based on the data that that you all provide in the legislature based off data that we have, that we get from Moody's Analytics and others. And it's based on the numbers, and that's something that, and they enjoyed it, not enjoy, I don't know if that's the word, it's important for them to hear about the policies that the spending affordability puts forward, and that there is that legislative oversight and the process on how our budget works. So I think that that helps us as well.
Okay. Well, I will say I've been on the council for 2 years. I've been proud to work with a group of folks that have also worked with the administration and the budget experts in determining what budget we end up approving and what we end up presenting back to you. So I appreciate the clarification. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely. Director Reed, I had a quick question. You had talked about the retirement funding, and I think you said we're at 58.2% now.
Yes, sir.
But you talked about this 5-year smoothing.
Mhm.
And I assume the smoothing, we're smoothing to an average return rate. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then will that affect our, I mean, do we have plans to start to bolster that 58% up to a higher number, or what's your thinking on that?
So my thinking is that when, a lot of this is tied to the returns and the investment performance that we've seen. This this has been a wild year. So we're, again, our sweet spot is this 6.375. That's what the number we want to beat over time, and that's a very conservative rate. So and that's a rate, and I think it's a prudent move to keep that rate, and so does the Board of Trustees. I think when you stack us up against other localities, they have higher rates, thus they have higher funded status. I could say we're going to make 8% on the money, and then it'd pop up in the 70s. But I don't think we're going to. I'd rather be conservative and beat it than not, because in the last 5 years we haven't, and it's all because of this 1 year, FY22, 10.3% negative return. So, as we work over time, again, the 6.378 is fairly conservative, but we plan to beat that. But I said last year, I was expecting to see it turn around a little bit. We got to erase that gain in 22. So it could take 2 more years of very strong investment performance, and we're hoping to see that with Wilshire to turn that curve.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, comments from the members for OBF before we move on? None? Okay. Mr. Irwin, who's up next?
Okay, so up next, Mr. Reed gets to stay in the hot seat because we have capital and debt
Capital
service,
budget.
the discussion there. And Ronit Rubin from my office, she not only analyzed the capital budget and debt service from the perspective of general government, but she also looked at the schools side of things. But we're going to defer that until the schools hearing, that piece of it. So we'll start with just the county government focused capital and debt service discussion. So
Great.
Ronit, you can take it away.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can.
Wonderful, thank you. The budget highlights for the fiscal year 2026 CPI capital budget and program, general government debt service, and PAYGO contribution to capital begin on page 2. As shown at the top of the budget summary, at the top of page 2, the proposed fiscal year 2026 CPI capital budget totals $813.2 million, an increase of $503.3 million, or 162.4% over the fiscal year 2025 budget. The increase is due to the fact that fiscal year 2026 is the first year of the biennial cycle, when bond funding is appropriated. As shown at the bottom of the budget summary, the proposed fiscal year 2026 general government debt service and general fund PAYGO contributions to the capital budget together increases by $6.9 million, or 2.7% over the fiscal year 2025 budget. Capital budget highlights begin at the bottom of page 2 and continue on page 3, noting the substantial earmarks related to school construction projects that include funding for the Dulaney High and Towson High replacement schools, the construction of major general government buildings, including the Randallstown Library, North County Senior Center, Jacksonville Senior Center, Essex Police Precinct, and Sparrows Point Fire Station, and the work recommended as part of a comprehensive facility assessment program. Debt service highlights begin on page 4 and include a discussion of changes to, as well as the county's compliance with, the Spending Affordability Committee's debt service guidelines. The issuance of general obligation bonds and certificates of participation in fiscal year 2025 is discussed on page 5. Planned fiscal year 2026 general obligation bond issuance is discussed on page 6. At the bottom of page 6, we note that the unissued balance to date for prior authorized debt totals $1.4 billion. Continuing on page 7, Exhibit 1 displays the history of the adopted CPI capital budget versus actual expenditures. On page 8, in Exhibit 2A and 2B, the bar chart shows the proposed sources and uses of funds included in the fiscal year 2026 CPI capital budget. On page 9, in Exhibit 3A and 3B, the bar charts show the proposed sources and uses of funds included in the fiscal year 2026 to fiscal year 2031 capital improvement program. Continuing on page 10, Exhibit 4 shows a history of general fund debt service, and Exhibit 5 shows CPI debt service history that includes interest amounts that were covered off budget with bond premiums. On page 11, Exhibit 6A and 6B show a history of the county's debt service as a percentage of total general fund revenues and debt outstanding as a percentage of total assessed property value and their compliance with the Spending Affordability Committee's current guidelines. On page 12, Exhibit 7 provides a history of total county and metropolitan district debt. And Exhibit 8 breaks out unissued authorized bonds by category. Starting on page 13, the analysis notes the areas within the capital and PAYGO budgets that may reflect budget flexibility. In an effort to provide insight into the fiscal year 2026 CPI capital project earmarks that may present an opportunity for potential reductions. Attached to this report are several appendices. Appendix A provides estimated total project costs, expenditures to date, and a timeline for notable project earmarks within the fiscal year 2026 CPI capital budget, as provided by OBF. Appendix B provides a timeline for site-specific recreation project earmarks, as provided by OBF. Appendix C provides developing sites, as provided by OBF. And finally, Appendix D provides a breakdown of the fiscal year 2026 CPI capital budget by bulk project. And now, finally, turning back to page 13, we have prepared a list of questions for the department and the Office of Budget and Finance, which we are hoping can be discussed today or addressed within a written response. I would like to thank the Office of Budget and Finance for their assistance during this budget review process. And at this time, I would like to turn it over for discussion.
Do we have any questions or discussion at this point, or want to hear from Director Reed first? Guess so. Director Reed?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon again, Mr. Chair, council members. Again, on this call, I have various subject matter experts. I believe we have department heads that could answer specific questions about any capital projects that could arise. We also have the wonderful Deb Schindel from Property Management, who will be speaking as well. I hope, yeah, there she is. So as we've discussed, as we've known, we have extensive capital needs across the county. We're building 3 new high schools almost running concurrently that I know BCPS is going to talk about their capital program in the next hearing. Senior centers and rec centers, police and fire stations, and the ongoing upkeep of maintenance of our existing buildings and infrastructure, and even the county's environmental infrastructure, which includes our large stream restoration and shoreline stabilization projects. It's all reflected in this budget, our FY26 capital budget, including Metro funds. It's a $1.4 billion program, and excluding Metro is $813 million. And again, we're in a bonding year, as Ronit mentioned, and so we have the high year when we have our borrowing built into our budget, and then followed by it'll be a lower year next year. And we have original PAYGO contributions that we sketch out in out years, is usually estimated around 16.3 million. However, due to higher than anticipated revenues received in FY25, we were able to bump that PAYGO amount to 141 million, again, showing a strong commitment to lessening borrowing costs, which is a great thing. And it also helps us to accelerate projects and again, be less reliant on borrowing. So the total 6-year program is a $3.2 billion. It's a living document. It's a living program. It remains flexible to respond to the evolving needs of the community, as well as the government's operational needs. We've know about the schools. We know about major replacements that we have coming up and major needs from community centers and recreation centers and senior centers. And we hear about that. And a lot of the ideas have been borne out in our town halls that we've had. And our capital budget, we formulated, by the parameters set forth in the county charter and code. And we win the annual GFOA award again for distinguished budget presentation for the principles in the formulation process that we go through. And of course, we're always happy to provide additional detail. It is a large document. All $1.4 billion are outlined in the exhibit on the back, down to every dollar, so that we have outlined. We're always happy to meet and talk about the document and what's in it. And we're always available, my staff and I, as needed. Some major projects that we are asking the council to approve include 2 senior centers, our Hereford and Jacksonville Senior Center that we're using bonding funding for, our Sparrows Point Fire Station. We have funding for the Essex Police Precinct replacement. Of course, we have Delaney and Towson High School, Scotts Branch Elementary School, and the Patapsco High School addition. We are also working on a building out of it, enhancing our 911 redundancy site and renovation. And that's very important to have that infrastructure in place so we can grow that to be a state-of-the-art facility, and many roof rehabilitation projects. And although the amount of bonds being programmed in 26 is larger than our typical referendums, we felt it necessary to continue the momentum on getting these projects done within budget and on time, and in meeting the constituents, their needs that they have expressed in the past. And I think in each package, it's been brought up a few times throughout these reviews about unappropriated cash balances that I've seen in the capital projects. And I think Ms. Schindel had noted that, encumbrance on a capital project is only booked when various stages of a capital project begin. Therefore, it wouldn't be abnormal to see large amounts of unencumbered funds. Prior year funding is used for prior year authorized projects. And it's really important that those dollars be available prior to award during any aspect of the capital cycle, whether it's feasibility, design, or construction. And there's an ongoing assessment process that property management uses in conjunction with agency personnel throughout the life cycle of a project to identify progress, timeline for completion, and budget, and how it's staying within budget. And surpluses are identified that can be identified, or we go through the reallocation process each year as identified on page 23 of our capital budget, and that there is a process where we go through with the approval that we are able to adjust as needed, and due to emergency repairs or other maintenance issues that come along. Some of the projects that we are working on that may not have funding encumbered are detention center elevator projects. We have 7.5 million. We're completing an emergency replacement on an elevator, and we're in design for the remaining 6 elevators. Are always a thing coming up. Our Dunbarton House, we have a renovation of 1.5 million, and we are in design and we are bid out for construction. We have energy performance contracts for 4 buildings for 4.5 million that we are finalizing, and then detention center roofing for a little over $1.5 million, and that quotes are in progress. It's really important. We also are making a concerted effort to catch up on major and deferred maintenance, as outlined as the auditor note in our third-party assessment. In prior discussions with this chamber, the council has expressed support and encouraged us to address these much-needed maintenance needs in the county. And although these aren't always sexy or interesting, and as you can see in the back of that budget, some things like doorknobs and other things we're doing, fully funding those major maintenance and deferred, those needs for an enterprise our size that serves the diverse residents that we do is prudent and reasonable to have those dollars in place and available, and really put our mouth where our money is, or vice versa. And Councilman Patoka, you often quote, and I've heard it a few times recently, and I hope I don't butcher this, but good public policy is reflected in the budget that's produced. I hope I said that correctly. And I think that this capital budget reflects just that, really owning up to and recognizing that the stock of infrastructure that we have, that our employees work in and that our residents enjoy, is aging, and it requires constant attention. We're not going to kick the can down the road when it comes to addressing these needs, and as we move forward, we'll see these dollars put in there. So as we talk about that, I want to kick it over to Deb Schindel at this point to talk about this important area and to kind of address some of the other things mentioned in the auditor's analysis. So with that, Deb, do you want to
Sure.
hop in if that's okay, Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Director Reed. Council Chair Ertel, value members of the County Council, and auditors, thank you for this opportunity for us to discuss our very vast and fluid 1036 capital budget. Our capital team currently has 224 active projects with a staff of 26. Our building maintenance unit currently has 96 active capital projects. We have the privilege of support and work with so many agencies such as aging, public libraries, detention center, fire, police, rec and parks, and many others with new projects and internal requests for systemic renovations. In 2023, we completed our first ever building assessment on approximately 191 of our largest buildings throughout the county. As we previously mentioned, this is a valuable tool that helps our department develop our yearly capital budget request for programming for 1036. It is also important to note that in addition to this tool, we also have many other assets such as fuel tanks, comfort stations, office trailers, and other ancillary structures that we also maintain and repair that were not part of the building assessments. These assets are also factored into the priority ranking during our budget development. In FY25, we were able to start 49 building assessment projects with an estimate of 2.4 million identified from year 1 in the building assessment report, while continuing to complete some priority fiscal year projects and other non-building assessment projects that were identified, such as Catonsville Senior Center boiler replacement, Cockeysville Library front lobby window replacement, Liberty Resource Center's generator replacement, Pikesville Senior Center rooftop replacement, Golden Ring Fire's HVAC system renovation, White Marsh Police fire alarms, and the Victory Villa Senior Center roof replacement, to name a few, while still aggressively supporting all of the new construction/renovation projects for our partners, such as completing the 2 rec centers, the Hazelwood Skate Park, and the Catonsville Library, and Board of Elections new space with a renovation. PM continues to work on Bicota Senior Center's renovation, the 911 Gilroy build-out, the Jacksonville and Hereford Senior Centers, the Catonsville Fire, the Essex and Wilkins Police, and many others. We are planning to utilize approximately $43 million out of the 95 for building assessment projects in FY26, We are anticipating to complete approximately 480 projects that were tied to the building assessment report for both year 1 and partial year 2. Each fiscal year, we increase each building assessment project with a 6% escalation, which is within the industry standards. With the unforeseen impacts of possible tariffs, materials, and labor increases, we will continue to complete as many projects as both financially and labor resources allow. If needed, we will carry out projects that we were not able to complete to the next fiscal year as a priority. I would be remiss not to mention that our agency, along with our committed partners in the Office of Sustainability, have also been working very closely to develop a plan to comply with the state's building energy performance standards. We have approximately 26 buildings that are over the 35,000 square feet and fall under this requirement. For those who do not know, there are 2 phases of this law, and the county has been actively gearing up for compliance. The county now has a tracking software that is able to benchmark energy data usage to share with the state before the September 1st, 2025 deadline. We are working with vendors to develop a strategic plan for the buildings that have been identified in order to bring each facility into compliance with energy reduction targets to meet the greenhouse gas emission goals starting in 2030 with a net zero greenhouse gas emissions in 2040. This will help us avoid compliance fees of a minimum estimated to be 13 million from years 2030 to 2040. In addition, this will help us begin to shape our FY27 and beyond capital funding request in conjunction with our building assessment. With that, years 3 through years 10 may be different than we previously shared because we're still developing that process. Property management has very dedicated professionals who are required to be 24/7 that often takes them away from their families. I feel we have one of the strongest customer service teams in the county. I want to personally thank all of our staff for their true commitment to their customers. We continue to remain steadfast to our tagline, quote, working together to build and maintain a better Baltimore County. And with that, I defer back to Director Reed.
Yeah, thank you, Deb. And I appreciate that. And we, I know we talk about, to Deb's, I wanted to credit the team. We talk about snow removal and things like that. DPWT gets a lot of the credit, but we also have, property management does the snow removal and responds to weather-related events for all of our county buildings, for all 700 of those buildings. And, this year we finally had some activity, and those folks were out all night long in the cold and all that stuff. So Deb, thank you to you and your team for doing that. Now that I've been involved, it really they're out there all the time as well. So we won't forget about that. At this point, I think Deb mentioned that in FY25 alone, we added an additional 150,000 square feet in building space for Baltimore County with the 2 rec centers, Middle River and Rosedale, the Woodlawn Senior Center, Sparrows Point Park. We also had a skate park come online in Meadow Creek Park. All these great things that we are finally seeing come to fruition. So again, Deb's team is building them, and they're working to build and maintain a better Baltimore County. And with that, we're happy to answer any questions you may have, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Any questions from the members? Councilman Patoka.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Director Reed. It was a good presentation. Deb Shingles, thank you. A couple of questions. Just on the capital budget, I think, yes, you're right. Capital budget should have some level of flexibility in it, but also I think it needs to have some level of predictability built into it as well. So, for example, if a certain street is going to get resurfaced or a certain park is going to get developed into a park, not developed into something else. When when is that funding available? Is it locked in? Just last night, there was a lot of confusion on a street project in the Powhatan community about whether it was scheduled years ago or whether it was scheduled now. I think we've got it straightened out, but I guess it would be really helpful to me, and I assume some of my colleagues, if street resurfacing or any other thing where there was predictability and it was locked in, so there wouldn't be unnecessary flexibility where something all of a sudden becomes higher priority or something becomes lesser of a priority. So, I've said this, and this is not the first time you've heard me say this. I've said it from year to year about having some definition, especially on the level of funding that isn't specified, so that we can go to our communities and say this improvement will happen in this fiscal year, or it'll happen in 3 fiscal years from now. But that's just a comment. I'll just put that out there. And then the question I have is, one of the tools in capital budgeting that I've known to be effective is at the beginning of the capital budgeting process is to revisit every single appropriation that's ever been made, and to see which projects still exist, which project numbers still exist, and if they do, are there any funds remaining in those projects? And if, let's say, a project over the course of years has become dormant, or a project has the project's been completed, but there remains some funding in the project account number, and then do we go through that process and then actually create a de-appropriation request where the council would actually act? There'd be a recommendation to de-appropriate those funds. Sometimes it's just pennies in the couch that you find, but then to actually de-appropriate those funds and then repurpose them for other more relevant and necessary capital projects.
Yeah, that's a good question, Council, and I can address that. When we begin the capital budget formulation begins sooner than operating, and usually in November and December, we call the agencies in and we start working through that process exactly. What projects are not I don't want to say backburned, or where we have additional funding, where we may need funding in like project categories, and then we do that process, the reallocation of funding in the new capital budget, and that's what you see in the budget documents. So that is an exercise. That's the first thing we do from the agencies, and then we get a process moving forward from where they go, and working with the agencies to tell us what is not going to be moving forward and what is going to be available, and that's the reallocations. So we do that. That's the first process we do go through, and then that ultimately ends up in the funding that you see reallocated in the budget documents to move forward to some of these projects.
So it's articulated in the budget as a repurposing. There's not an official action of de-appropriation. Is that correct?
I do not, but yes, I don't believe there's not an official action of de-appropriation.
Okay, I just wanted to understand that. Thank you.
Yeah, and we're always happy to talk through it too, and can provide more detail as we go through that.
Because one of the other, it's a collateral benefit, is in my experience, if let's say there's a project that's been dormant, and then there is the agency is made aware that it's going to be de-appropriated, it kickstarts the project that may have been dormant for just maybe bandwidth issues or other issues. And then it also, like I said, if it's let's say we just we built, let's just say hypothetically, we acquire an office building in Towson, and then we spend some money on elevators and other items in that building, and then when the building is complete, we find that we have 10 or 20 or 30,000 left in that account. Then that would be repurposed it would be, what's the mechanics of moving that money from the, let's say in this particular example, an office building in Townsend, and we move it to another activity? How do we do that physically?
So that is all in 1036 in general operation in general government buildings, and that's part of the process that we work through during this process, and that we present with the budget approval. I want to let's talk about another building in Towson, and I want to talk about why it's important how we operate the way we do. This last winter, right before Christmas break, the boiler in the Jefferson building went up, and this would have been and where they were, and Deb could provide all the detail. I learned a lot about boilers. We had a lot of things to take care of. We had to get some folks out of the building, and then make room for potential new boiler. And the new boiler was coming from down south, and the hard part about was transferring it up here. And that new boiler would have been very, very expensive. It turned out that we were able to fix the problem with the current boiler in place, and I think we have a sustainable solution. But that would have been very, very expensive. I mean, I don't even remember what the price tag was on it. But that's why we have the contingency that we're talking about, at least the contingency that we've outlined in 1036 and the availability. We also had the new courthouse, the Cascade, 2 years ago was crumbling. That required a 1.5 emergency repair. That's when all the scaffolding was up.
Yeah.
And those things kind of come up. Yeah, that was like one of those things that came up and we had to deal with very quickly. I mean, there's things that come up all the time, but that is a process that we work through during the executive level review in the late fall.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any additional questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Councilman Marks.
Yes, thank you. I agree with Councilman Patoka's comments. And I understand this is a very large county. There's a lot going on, but it's always helpful when the council office knows that a capital project is imminent. For example, traffic issues. We get complaints about traffic issues, and it might be helpful to be able to alert people that something's going to be occurring, whether it's a resurfacing project or what. I know past administrations have been reluctant to give us that information because I guess they might think we might run out there on Facebook and promote something, but that sort of advance notice does help us because ultimately we're going to get the inquiries. Just a brief comment. I thank you for all you do. Deb Schindel, in particular, has been outstanding at her job. I can remember under her predecessor, it was sometimes difficult to get information. She and her staff are a hallmark for customer service, and I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Yeah, and Deb and team have really, that's a new office up there.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Marks. Councilman Crandall, and then I see Councilman Young and Councilman Jones after that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Reed, we're aware of a grant agreement between Baltimore County and the Baltimore County Revenue Authority for $6.6 million. That total comes about, as I understand it, from monies that have been paid into, I guess what you could call a fund over previous fiscal years. The $6.6 million grant that is to go to Rocky Point Golf Course, which the Revenue Authority manages. Has that money gone to the Revenue Authority yet?
Yes, sir.
It has.
Yes, that was in prior, and Matt Carpenter, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt.
It's in the process. Funding is not totally going out. They're still in the process of construction and the whole process. Funds have not gone out the door, if that's the case.
But it's been appropriated.
Yes, it's been a part of prior authorizations.
Okay. I'm in receipt of the grant agreement, which is undated. Is there any reason
why the administration did not follow the statute to notify the council and give us a 14-day notice of a grant, especially for a substantial amount of $6.6 million?
I believe that the law office has indicated that it wasn't absolutely necessary according to how the was written into the capital budget wise, sir. It's something we can all consider going forward on this one as well.
Well, I'm considering this as the council being hoodwinked, is how I'm considering it. How is it determined that the Baltimore County taxpayer should be paying to build a restaurant that competes with local restaurants? Is the administration aware of the fund balance that the Revenue Authority has of their own money?
So, Councilman, I don't think this wasn't in any intentional of hoodwinking or whatever you say. I think and I'm gonna, we could follow up also, is that, you know, it was designed and designated at the time for that purpose, for a quasi-government agency. And
What was designed for that purpose?
the partial funding for this Rocky Point facility you mentioned.
Well, Mr. Reed, I'm going to have to disagree with you there, because in previous fiscal years, when we have given $1 million to the Revenue Authority, the description is for parking garages, parking garage maintenance and renovations in the 5th District. And then a couple years ago, the language got changed to end collaborative projects. And now this year, there's another $1 million in the Revenue Authority budget. And Rocky Point Golf Course is outlined, the address is actually in the budget book. So I am extremely concerned. And again, I don't understand how a statute that clearly says that any grant executed by Baltimore County has to come before the council in the form of a 14-day notice, which we never received. So I don't really want to follow up. I want to know what in the world's going on and how this happened without the council ever approving any of this.
So, Councilman, I will follow up with you. I am going to have to defer to our partners in law and find out, you know, what was said about whether it was a grant improvement or not. But we will research it. I know that this was a you know, a collaborative initiative of the past administration that was made, and we will find out, and I'll get back to you.
Well, I mentioned the Revenue Authority fund balance. The Revenue Authority is sitting on about 18 million of their own dollars. Why do they need the Baltimore County taxpayer to build a restaurant that really they seem to be the only ones that care about? Why are the taxpayers creating a restaurant that competes against other restaurants? The Revenue Authority wants to build a restaurant. Why can't they use their own money or their own borrowing authority to build their restaurant? I think this is a serious misuse of taxpayer dollars. I'll go a little bit further. There was a ground lease agreement when the golf courses were initially transferred to the Revenue Authority from the county back in the 90s in the Ruppersberger administration. There was a ground lease agreement talking about 96, 97. Part of that agreement was that the Revenue Authority was to contribute any profits, not the profits, but a small percentage of profits to a fund, or back to Baltimore County, probably back to the general fund. in our investigation, we have found that the Revenue Authority since 1996 or 97, hasn't given the county back one dime. And yet they want $6.6 million to build a restaurant when they're sitting on 18 million. So a lot of this isn't making a lot of sense to me. And then if you look at the ground lease agreement, which I don't know if I would expect anybody to do that, but when this grant agreement was executed, someone should have looked at the ground lease agreement, which the first amendment to the ground lease agreement clearly states that the Revenue Authority is solely responsible for the construction and maintenance of clubhouses on the golf courses. So there's a lot that stinks with this. There's a lot that stinks with this, and I would encourage my colleagues to discuss this with me, because I think this is, again, this is a complete misuse of taxpayer dollars, especially in a tight capital budget, when people like Deb Sindel and Lauren Buckler are trying to scramble to help fix aging buildings and aging infrastructure, yet we somehow are funding $6.6 million for a restaurant nobody cares about. So I would like some follow up on this. I want some. I said I don't want to follow up, but I guess I was speaking out of frustration. But I want to know why we never received a 14-day notice on this grant. What the legal means were for that, and why basically the project, even though I know there was a groundbreaking and there was a press release and all this, but why the project in itself, when we were funding this through the years, $1 million and sometimes more than $1 million per fiscal year, why the project was never itemized, and it was put under parking garages in the 5th District. So a lot of questions with this. Deliberations are tomorrow, gentlemen and ladies. So I would like some answers.
Councilman, we'll run that down for you and get you some answers.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Absolutely. Councilman Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your prerogative, but it looked like CEO Deandra Walker had put her hand up to clarify.
Did you
defer to that.
Was that a clarification, or were you just saying you'll check?
Yeah, I was just letting them know we'll check. It was during the last administration. I'll go back. I'll do the research. I don't know that I'll have it for you by tomorrow, but I'll do my best. I'll jabber James now and ask him to pull whatever information he has on what happened before. But that wasn't for this fiscal year. But I will have James go back and pull any information in the history of what happened and try to get it to you as quickly as possible.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilman Randall, did you have a question on that?
Oh, I'm sorry. No, thank you, Madam CEO. I realize that the $6.6 million grant is not is not a line item, budget item in this year's capital budget, but the $1 million is. And the way that this 6.6 has been created was $1 million or a little bit $1 million plus over probably the last 5 or 6 fiscal years.
And if I'm not mistaken,
say like $1 million at a time.
Right. If I'm not mistaken, and I may be mistaken, but we supplement parking in Towson. And that $1 million, I'll go back and I'll pull it, but the $1 million is to help supplement the cost of parking and for
Employees.
the employees here in Towson. But I'll pull the information to make sure.
I understand. But how did the fund for $6.6 million get built then?
I don't know that part. I was just referencing the $1 million, sir.
Okay.
But I'll research it for you.
All right. And our auditor's office has been extremely helpful in helping me understand this. And she may have some further questions that maybe we don't have to get into right now, but I'll just ask Ms. Irwin, am I stating things correctly as we understand them at this point?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
I mean, I understand that there's in terms of VOM, there's a VOM account for parking. And then there was this capital account. We can hash it all out and
okay,
discuss it all.
all right. Thank you, Madam CEO. Director Reed. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Absolutely. Councilman Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Reed, I could form this in the, in the form of a question, but during the SAC deliberations, and when we were talking about what your needs were, what the county's needs were for spending affordability, and for debt increase, you all had worked with us on putting out a document that I think addresses some of Councilman Marks's and Councilman Toka's comments related to where projects are in their project life. And I know Director Schindel had brought it up too about the necessity that you need for having fund balances for phased projects so that that money's there when it moves to another phase. You did submit a document that was very helpful in that, talking with the other members about where projects were and why we would see funds sitting and not being allocated because they were in a different phase of the project. I guess the question would be, when could we see another document? But your answer would be your entire staff has been focused on the budget season. So it would be great to start seeing those documents again. And it was a good step in the right direction because I know you all had never done that before. But I think it was very helpful, especially when it was leading up to the budget season and the SAC discussions, why you were requesting this and why we were seeing data related to the capital budget. And if we could get that more consistently, I think it would make us feel better from either even a district level or even just a holistic county level, where projects are in terms of their life cycle, which ones are started, which ones aren't, and why we see a fund balance with different projects. I think that would be helpful if we could start after the budget season, seeing some of those again, and I'd be happy to talk with you and your staff about what would be the most effective way to do that with knowing that it's not a consistent thing you've done in the past.
Sure. Yeah, Councilman. Yeah, happy to. Always happy to provide information. Just the realities of ensuring that we have the staff to do it. But definitely looking forward to providing you all more regular updates. Is something I know. DPWT, going back to Councilman Marks's comment, that there is a website, GIS page of all projects. I believe Ms. Buckler's listening, and their quarterly reports that come out as far as from the DPWT end, to keep you all briefed. But we will look to provide more holistic and regular reports to you all.
That'd be helpful. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilman Young. Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me start by saying I'm very interested in the questions that Councilman Crandall asked, and I too would be very interested in the responses. So when you give the responses to Councilman Crandall, if you could be so kind as to copy me on it as well, I would really appreciate it. That said, I want to congratulate you, Deb Schindel, you and the property management team on doing a fantastic job. Again, very responsive, and I appreciate the work that you're doing. So keep up the good work. And as Councilman Marks mentioned, I remember a time when the folks in property management were not very forthcoming and responsive. So thank you so much for all you do, and tell the team to keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And Mr. Chair, just to chime in on that, Councilman Jones, I remember those times when the Director of Property Management did not even testify for his own budget. Remember those days?
Mm-hmm.
So thanks, Mr.
Absolutely.
Happy to be a partner. Thank you all for your support also. It's been a great partnership, and we got a few more years to go. I appreciate you all.
All right, thank you. Councilman Marks.
Yes, two questions. Question for Mr. Bostwick. The authority for the Baltimore County Revenue Authority comes completely from within Baltimore County, correct? Or it looks Article 9 of the code, correct?
Who's the question?
It is.
It's
it
a
is
question to Mr. Boswick.
Oh,
It is in the Article 9, as you say, but I think it also comes from authority granted by the state of Maryland for its creation.
Yeah, I just don't feel, I don't know if my colleagues feel the same way. I don't feel as connected as I used to the Revenue Authority. I mean, it seems like in the past we had more regular updates from them, and that's something we may want to look at. Secondly, and I know the time is getting late here and we have the superintendent waiting, can I ask an update on Washington Avenue? That was the big discussion at the last year's budget hearing. Where are we with that?
Oh,
Deb, you want to take that?
sure, absolutely. We have all of the floors built out with the exception of the police department. Everybody's moved in. The police department, internal affairs is our final move in, and they should be moving in, I do believe, in June. We're finalizing that, and then our building is fully occupied and everything is up and running. So they are our final move in, and we're excited to get them in, and I know they're excited to move in. So everybody seems happy, a space well used, and that's where we are in currently.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
all right, Councilman Jones, sorry. Do you have an additional question? or
Mr.
is your
Chair,
hand
I
still
just
up?
wanted to put a plug in for Ken Mills of the Revenue Authority. Councilman Marks, I would urge you, if you have any questions, please give him a call. He has been very responsive to me, explaining things, call me all times of the day and night, because we have a number of issues going on with the Revenue Authority in my district. They manage the regional park here, and they have the ice skating rink and some other things that are going on up there. So whenever I have an issue, I reach out to him, and he is very responsive. So I guess I wanted to put that plug in there. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Councilman Marks.
Yes, Ken Mills has always been an outstanding person to work with, and now that I no longer represent Towson, I know I don't engage as much with his office, and of all the council districts, I may be one of the ones that has the fewest Revenue Authority facilities. But I think the conversation between Councilman Crandall and everyone here does illustrate that there's a bit of a disconnect. And I share Councilman Crandall's concerns. Thank you.
For the record, so do I. I'm not sure why we're spending taxpayer dollars on a restaurant at Rocky Point. It just doesn't. If the Revenue Authority wants to do a parking garage there, or a restaurant, I'm sorry, they should have the revenue to pay for it, or they should borrow for that.
Mr. Chair, if I may add again,
Yes.
one other item. By the way, this is not personal at all between me and Mr. Mills. In my last conversation with him, in full disclosure, I asked that he construct this funding as a loan, and that the Revenue Authority could pay the county back over 20, 30 years, whatever the terms would be worked out between the administration and Revenue Authority. That idea seemed to fall on deaf ears, and I did not hear back from Mr. Mills. So I just wanted to be clear, this is not personal, and I'm sorry if I got a little heated. It's just that there's a certain sense of frustration that I have with this particular issue, because between my office and the auditor's office, we've been asking questions, and we are kind of getting circular answers. And so that's one of the reasons that I chose to bring it up at today's hearing. And one last thing that I'll leave you with is that years ago, the Revenue Authority applied for a liquor license to the Baltimore County Liquor Board, and the local restaurant owners were pretty upset in that they did not want to create competition because they derive a significant amount of business from golfers patronizing their establishments after playing around. During that hearing with the liquor board, I believe it was Mr. Mills, I'm pretty certain that it was, or at least a representative of the Revenue Authority, stated that they only wanted to sell beer on the course, that they had no intention of opening a restaurant and they would not open a restaurant. And I was told by restaurant owners in the area at that time that this just seems like the camel's nose under the tent, and sure thing, that's what's happening. There's just again there's a lot to this, and the whole funding mechanism is a bit complicated and convoluted and a little bit to unpack. As well as the fact that there are lease agreements and capital budget allocations and amendments to the lease agreement and a grant agreement. There's a bit going on to this that needs to be unpacked. So I appreciate the attention to the matter, and I'll try to let us get on with the rest of our proceedings without bringing more up on this. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilman Crandall. Any other questions, comments before we move on? Okay, I think BCPS is up next. Is that right, Ms. Irwin?
That's right. We have both the operating budget and the capital budget. It's the county's budget for education. So we'll start off with Carrie Vivian discussing the operating budget.
Okay, Carrie, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Operating budget highlights for BCPS begin on page 2 of the analysis. The proposed FY 2026 budget for BCPS totals approximately $2.4 billion and reflects an increase of approximately $78.4 million or 3.4% over the FY 2025 adopted budget. The county's general fund budget for BCPS totals $1.1 billion, an increase of $12.4 million or 1.1%, largely due to the school system's personnel and personnel-related expenses, special education-related costs, and utilities, which are partially offset by position and other cost reductions. These budget changes are shown in the schedule on page 5, which provides amounts in thousands of dollars. Excluding PAYGO and debt service appropriations, the county's proposed general fund contribution increases by $26.9 million, or 2.7% over the FY 2025 contribution. The proposed budget exceeds the state's maintenance of effort requirement by $33.5 million, or 3.5%. The extent that the council determines that less funds than proposed are necessary for BCPS's purposes, budget reductions must not exceed the $33.5 million over MOE amount. The special fund or non-county portion of the proposed BCPS budget totals $1.3 billion, an increase of $66 million or 5.4%, primarily due to an increase in budgeted state funding. The proposed operating budget relies on the use of $33.4 million of BCPS's fund balance, which BCPS projects will total $60 to $65 million at the end of FY 2025. On page 6, Exhibit 1 displays BCPS's budget history. The pie charts on page 7 show how the proposed funding will be allocated across programs and expenditures and show the budget by fund. Continuing on page 8, Exhibit 3 shows the budgeted increases and decreases by general categories. Exhibit 4 shows a history of authorized versus filled positions. Page 9 notes the areas within the budget that may reflect budget flexibility in an effort to provide insight into the operational context for any potential reductions. Exhibit 5 on page 10 reflects the history of BCPS's general fund balance, its FY 2025 year-end projection, and the amount by which the budget exceeds MOE for FY 2026. Finally, we prepared a list of questions, which also begin on page 10, and which we are hoping can be discussed today or addressed with a written response. I would like to thank BCPS, particularly the Office of Budget and Reporting and the County's Office of Budget and Finance for their assistance during the budget review process. At this time, I would like to turn it over to my colleague, Ronit, for an overview of the BCPS capital budget.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. The budget highlights for BCPS Capital begin following the cover page on page 1. As shown in the budget summary, the proposed fiscal year 2026 CPI capital budget for BCPS totals $358.3 million, an increase of $239.9 million, or 202.6% over the fiscal year 2025 budget. The increase is due to the fact that fiscal year 26 is the first year of the biennial cycle, when bond funding is appropriated. The 6-year capital improvement program totals $758.3 million, a decrease of $91.2 million, or 10.7% over the fiscal year 2025 budget. Capital budget and program highlights begin in the middle of page 1, noting the substantial earmarks related to funding for the Delaney High and Towson High replacement schools, major maintenance and roof rehabilitation projects at several sites, funding for the Scotts Branch Elementary School replacement school, and design funding for the Patapsco High School addition. On page 2, we discuss the status of major school construction projects, the process for obtaining state aid for school construction, and state aid highlights, including a $40 million allocation in fiscal year 2026 for the Delaney High Replacement School. On page 3, we discuss overcrowding and the fiscal restraints that are delaying additional school construction to address it. On pages 4 and 5, we discuss the status of current boundary studies and changes. Continuing on page 6, in Exhibit 1A and 1B, the bar charts show the proposed sources and uses of funds included in the fiscal year 2026 CPI capital budget for schools. On page 7, in Exhibit 2A and 2B, the bar charts show the proposed sources and uses of funds in the fiscal year 2026 to fiscal year 2031 capital improvement program for schools. Pages 8 to 10 provide detailed information on school year 2024 to 2025 enrollment and capacity for elementary schools. Pages 11 to 12 provide detailed information on school year 2024 to 2025 enrollment and capacity for middle schools. And pages 13 to 14 provide detailed information in school year 2024 to 2025 enrollment and capacity for high schools. Starting on page 15, the analysis notes that capital budget flexibility is low in light of all the needs and limited funding, but there is some moderate flexibility in terms of current funding allocation to bulk projects, which provides the Board of Education with the ability to prioritize projects. Finally, we have prepared a list of questions for BCPS and the Office of Budget and Finance, which we are hoping can be discussed today or addressed within a written response. I would like to thank the Office of Budget and Finance and BCPS for their assistance during this budget review process. And at this time, I would like to turn it over for discussion.
Any discussion at this point? Questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Councilman Marks.
Yes, you're free to comment on this, Ronit, or maybe it's something the superintendent can discuss. This is in your district, Mr. Chairman, Overlay High School, but it affects the Northeast, as well, all of the Northeast, including parts of Rossville and Fullerton that I represent. I noticed in the budget notes that it says that the schedule is still being reevaluated at this time. I'd be curious to know when we would have some sort of a schedule, overall, pathway to getting moving on this, recognizing, of course, that the funding is still going to be an issue. But it is an important project that affects multiple areas in the Northeast.
Yes, and I'd add that, and I'm not sure if it showed it, but it looked like, I'm not sure if I was looking at high schools or not, but it looked like the Overly area wasn't overcrowded, which isn't true.
And in fact, I've said this several times. We've made a lot of progress on overcrowding, particularly at the elementary, middle school levels in the Northeast. But it's this high school area that we still have to get our arms around.
Yep. Dr. Rogers, did you want to proceed or?
I certainly receive your comments, Councilman Marks, and agree in terms of the high schools are the significant areas that need our time and attention, which is why for the first time, we have 3 high school projects happening at one time at significant cost. I would invite Dr. Grimm if there are any specifics regarding the Overly project to share that with the council at this time.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Rogers, and Councilman Marks. Thank you for your question. I believe the biggest hurdle that we had was identifying the site and identifying Overly as the replacement school, as the board has approved that and moved forward. At this point, as you indicated, we are still trying to evaluate what future funding we may have for that particular project. However, that has not stopped our internal staff from beginning to plan and to support Overly in other ways with anticipation. Not only is their enrollment about to go up this coming year, as we're aware, but that this is a future project. As you're also aware, there are some other grant-funded projects that are happening at Overly, and so we're trying to overlay all those pieces together. But I do not have a timetable, but we can get back to you on that.
May I ask one more quick follow-up, Mr. Chairman?
Absolutely, Councilman.
Perry Hall High School, my alma mater, built in 1968, and it is showing its age in many respects. Mr. Grimm, is that starting to move up on the schedule, right? Or at least a renovation?
So, Councilman Marks, I know we've done a number of systemics at Perry Hall High. For example, the fire alarm system and some of the others. But yes, in my IPAS, it will continue to evaluate the internal systems there. That is correct.
Okay. Yeah, just I know they're doing some work with the auditorium and HVAC and the track. I'm glad the track's in the budget, but just the overall appearance, it really needs a refresher soon. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Councilman Crandall, sorry.
I kind of hesitate to supersede Dr. Rogers and her comments, but since Councilman Marks has brought this subject up, can I ask about Ferris Point High School, middle school, and what the status is on the whole project and the whole solution?
Yes. So, Councilman Crandall, I can answer that question at first, and then if you have additional questions, we'd be happy to answer them. So most recently, I believe it was in October, we met with the community. That's the last community meeting that we had at Sparrows Point. We informed them at that time that the Board of Education had approved 2 replacement schools, for us to approve 2 replacement schools at the site. We did a comprehensive feasibility study of the existing facility and what the educational needs would be to move forward with that particular project. It was determined that at that time, which was last spring, that it would be cheaper for the county to move forward with 2 replacement schools rather than either trying to renovate the existing facility and add either a separate high school or a separate middle school. So at this point, where we are is we are still looking at the design and the layout on the property itself and waiting for funding. We have partnered with Baltimore County government, as you know, specifically recreation and parks, because that Carl Trust property is a key element to moving this project forward. And
Right.
currently, the design plans would be to include the Carl Trust property with some of those fields. And then again, to have a separate middle school and a separate high school on the site. But we are in the early stages of planning and design for that particular replacement project.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Crandall. I appreciate that update. Of course, we want it done yesterday.
Yes.
Certainly,
And
I know that it doesn't work like that. And obviously, money and resources are going to be the issue. If there's anything that I can do or my office can do to assist, especially with the Carl Trust property, which, as you said, is crucial to the expansion of the campus, to allow for 2 new schools, please let me know. And I appreciate everybody's work on Sparrows Point High School, middle school. I know that the community is anxious to get some relief there.
And we are anxious as well, Councilman Crandall. So thank you very much.
Sure, thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yep. Thanks, Councilman Crandall. Ms. Irwin, who's up? Superintendent?
Yes, indeed.
Superintendent Dr. Rogers, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate this opportunity to share with the council just some brief highlights from Baltimore County Public Schools, particularly as it relates to the operating budget. As was stated by our partner, Mr. Reed shared that we are in unprecedented financial times in terms of uncertainty. That is something that last year going into this operating budget that no one could predict. As we worked on our operating budgets last year to plan for this upcoming year, we had the same information that was available across the state of Maryland, particularly around the Maryland Blueprint. As you know, the Maryland Blueprint calls for an increase in funding to school systems, approximately 4% per year until 2033. Over the summer, we started hearing murmurings that the blueprint was in jeopardy, and early on in the fall, we began engaging the entire Team BCPS community, making sure that they were aware of what we were hearing, the potential fiscal challenges, where this year we are operating with a 1.7% increase in blueprint funding. We were anticipating, based on the formula for the upcoming fiscal year 26, 5.4%, that based on everything we were hearing, that was not likely to happen. And our operating budget process began early on in the fall. We have several components, including engaging directly with stakeholders, face-to-face and community conversations, a stakeholder survey where thousands of respondents responded, ongoing members with central office staff, with principals, as well as engaging with the Board of Education, responding to those questions and posting everything for our public on Budget 101, including data going back to, I think, fiscal year 18, to just make sure that there is clear understanding of not only our process, but where we are in terms of finances. I too want to salute and recognize our budget team. Very excited that we were able to have Mr. Saris come back in an acting capacity because he has more than 20 years of experience in our financial team in Baltimore County Public Schools. And so in this challenging time, his historical knowledge of Team BCPS, as well as partnership across agencies, has been invaluable as we navigate this time. Our team also, this is the 22nd year that they have received the ASBO Budgeting Award in a row. They've received the Financial Reporting award from GFOA as well as ASBO for 28 years in a row. And so it is a small team, but it is a mighty team that is truly committed to doing the work that is necessary to make sure that we move forward with plans that are in the best interest of the students. I also wanted to share that the fiscal uncertainty, which has resulted in a very challenging budget season, is not only coming from one place. So as I mentioned, the blueprint, a state legislation very clear with a plan going to 2033. We learned a few months ago that was in jeopardy. We ended up this budgeting season as a result of a lot of advocacy in a positive place with the state budget. However, there is federal uncertainty, and we receive almost 8% of our budget is from federal funds. The state of Maryland is now actively engaged in a lawsuit regarding Title I, which impacts our students low socioeconomic status needing additional resources. And locally, we know that the impact that is happening at the state level and the federal level, because we work so closely with our county executive, knowing the number of positions that are grant funded had an impact on the ability to respond to our request, which was a larger request this year as a result of several factors that we shared with our community many times, but it is worth repeating. Number one, our compensation package for year 2 for all of our BCPS team members, making sure it was important to us to exercise good faith and come into a multi-year compensation package. Number one, to achieve parity with our county government partners. We also had a sync where we were engaging in budget negotiations while we were presenting a budget, and that was not the most appropriate way to do it. But I think most importantly for our students, that it's important to us to have staff members that we can count on, that our staff members have that security that they need in terms of their compensation so they can fully engage in the work of teaching and learning and supporting teaching and learning because Baltimore County Public Schools has a lot of ground to cover. There were 12 years of academic decline, and it's going to take a rebuilding of foundation of infrastructure, implementing with fidelity to really turn that around. And we're very proud of what we've seen over the last year and a half. Implementation science, and we've heard feedback from stakeholders that they don't like to hear edu speak. So for everyone who is listening to this conversation, the people who study school systems, not only in the United States, but abroad, and study what makes the difference in a school system in terms of improving outcomes for students, which is 100% our goal and our core purpose in Baltimore County Public Schools. They share that it on average takes 3 years for a school system to start to right the ship. It takes about 3 years for you to start to see data trending in the right direction. For us, it has not been 3 years. And in this short period of time, we have seen every external data point trending in the right direction, whether we are talking about chronic absenteeism, and we know that students need to be in school in order for us to instruct them, having the highest percentage of improvement in the state of Maryland, or we're talking about how our students are doing on their growth targets for the measures of academic progress in mathematics, reading, the state assessment scores, literacy scores, and other areas, including graduation rate, where our improvement doubled the percentage of improvement from the year before. And so we are pleased with that progress. And we know that the key to the progress are the people in and around our buildings, not only in the classrooms and in the school buildings, but all of the people that support the school buildings in central office, whether we're talking about our transportation staff, we're talking about IT staff, or we are talking about the actual members of the special education department, the Department of Schools that go out for curriculum instruction in schools every day, that they all make a significant difference in terms of the outcomes for our students. And so it was important for me to provide that background in terms of how we came to create this 3-year agreement. Our budget team, of course, created an analysis. They looked at what they could expect forward funding and made a recommendation, which we took the entire costing to our Board of Education for review and approval. Knowing the tight fiscal landscape, we've made some proactive steps to reduce cost savings. Last year, those reductions were more than $100 million. This year, we started off with $26 million worth of reductions. Those reductions included everything from central office hiring freeze to eliminating supervisory positions, reducing conference travel, reducing mileage, reducing cell phone stipends, reducing supplies, and things of that nature to respond to the challenging fiscal times that we're in. I am grateful that the recommendation is for funding above maintenance of effort. And I am also grateful for the continued partnership and the questions that we have received, our ability to provide responses so that we can continue to move forward in the best interest of all of the students in Baltimore County Public Schools. So with that, I'll pause and turn it back over to you, Chair Ortel.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. We appreciate all your hard work. I know it's been a very trying year for you, especially with this budget. Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Dr. Rogers. I guess I'll start off. I do have several questions, but I guess want to at least start by telling you that I acknowledge and really, really appreciate the hard work you and every member of the DCPS team doing. I'm very, very proud to see the improvements that have been made academically, as well as the graduation rate, as well as the truancy rate, bringing that down. Because at the end of the day, you can't teach kids anything if they're not there. So clamping down and doing whatever's necessary, and obviously you've been very successful at getting those kids to come to school is very important. So I appreciate that very much. And I appreciate all the awards we've been receiving lately. So those things, I don't want to get into it. I might mess it up. I think it was like 5-star schools. Is that right? Am I saying that right? Yeah.
You are correct.
So all of those things are, listen, I think all of that is excellent for our students, excellent for our school system, and cast a very good, and it speaks well of Baltimore County in general when people see those things on the news. So I did have a couple of questions. Number one, I often hear these things, and I guess want to know how do our staff at in Towson at the central office stack up in terms of other jurisdictions or school systems of similar size?
So first, thank you for your comments. Truly appreciate the acknowledgement of the progress. And again, every time someone will hear me talk about the progress that Baltimore County has been making, you will also hear me acknowledge that we have a lot of work left to do. It took us a long time to get to this point, and so it's going to take several years to get to where we want to in terms of the entire state. If we look at central office as a whole, first, the team that you have for every senior leadership team, executive leadership team, cabinet, for us, we are the smallest size cabinet amongst all of the large school systems in the state of Maryland. And we are even smaller with the board's approval of the organization chart 2 weeks ago. We are even smaller than some of the medium-sized school districts. Our central office, we had received some feedback and we had some reports that our central office was much larger than comparably sized districts. Over the last 2 years, we've had a reduction of approximately 24%. That's going to bring us squarely in alignment with our neighbors. We also had our human resources chief reach out to chiefs in the other neighboring districts to make sure that it was an apples to apples comparison, that the positions that we were including in our reporting were the same positions that they were including. And so I think what everyone will see, in addition to the reductions that have been made over the last 2 years in the reporting in the Maryland State Department of Education, all of the large school systems will be reporting the same positions for an accurate comparison of central office employees.
Okay, and while we're on the subject of positions, first of all, I recognize and appreciate the fact that we were able to provide some compensation on a 3-year deal for our bargaining units and the hardworking people that work. You said that, right? And I guess, so listen, I wish there were a way that we could fully fund the deal that was initially set. But I do want to acknowledge and appreciate everything you've been doing to provide as much compensation to our hardworking folks at BCPS that you can. So I saw somewhere and that there were some position cuts. And I think it was maybe a couple of hundred, I think. And I realize it's a big school system and with probably 20,000 employees and 10,000 teachers. But can you share with me and the rest, how would those cuts affect our students? And what type of assurances can you give us that our students, that our progress will continue to move forward?
So thank you for that statement and the question. What we first had in the proposed budget from our county executive was where you saw a difference between the number of positions that we presented and the number of positions that are in the county executive's budget. And so to make sure that it's balanced, we have to reduce additional positions. Instead of taking the approach that we would across the board just increase class sizes, we took a different approach. And that approach was very tedious. It was very intentional. It was vetted with many members of our internal team, where we looked at formulas. For example, we have formulas that state after a certain number of students, we allocate X number of positions. So we reviewed and scrubbed all of those formulas to make sure that we were adhering to those spaces in the places where we had existing vacancies. This is on the school side, in the places where we had existing vacancies and we are also meeting the allocations. Those are places where recommendations are made for reductions, so that the overall goal is that not only are we not impacting students negatively by increasing class sizes, which at this point of the year becomes disruptive, and it's because it's based on enrollment. You have points of people, like a 0.1 of a teacher, and the teacher is a whole person. And it would disproportionately impact schools. We took this approach, prioritizing formulas, also prioritizing vacancies, and making sure that we have matches with people so that we're not creating more problems. And so that is how we are meeting the requirement of the county executive's proposed budget for those additional positions. And then we also have position reductions on the central office level. Central office wholeheartedly supports the work that happens in schools. And so we could not just eliminate a class of positions or a group of positions. We had to work directly with our chiefs to examine every position, to examine the work, how we could shift the work in spaces where we had more than one person in a position. Perhaps we had divided them by level. In the past, we were able to have a person that was assigned to elementary and a person that was assigned to secondary. We combined roles and then went through a process with HR, and we're currently in that process where staff members are notified if they have an interest in serving in that new revised capacity. They apply for those positions, and there's an interview process for the final selection. And so we've worked very hard to keep any and all reductions that we make away from the schoolhouse to the extent possible, which is why we have not increased class sizes across the board.
Okay, I'm winding down now. I just have one of the things that you said has sort of stuck out to me because I'm very, very concerned. They're saying courts, the 8% of the money that we receive from the federal government, is most of that for Title I, or is that for other things as well?
It's we have other grants as well, but I believe Title I is our largest source of federal funding. Mr. Sayers or Mr. Tantliff, they're both on the call. They can signal whether or not that is correct. But we also have, Title I, we have Title II, we have Title III, and other funds from the federal government. But Title I is the largest, I believe, Mr. Sayers?
Correct. And then our special education is those two together make up about 2/3 of the federal grant funds, which for next year's budgeted at about 178 million.
Now, I'm glad you said that because I had written it down at 208 million. So 178 million it is.
Yeah.
So how many people does that? How many people would that affect if we were to lose that 178 million? How many positions? Do we know?
We have approximately 1,200, I think, grant-funded positions in total. So it's significant. And of course, the students in poverty and students with disabilities are those that will be most directly affected. And so as Dr. Rogers said, Maryland is one of the 17 or 18 states that are actively engaged in litigation to try and preserve those two funding sources.
Well, I'm going to make a request, and I would hope that our legal department, as well as the county government, when we look at 1,200 people, I would hope that our legal department and our government would be providing whatever resources that I'm assuming is the Attorney General that is
Yes.
in that lawsuit. So I would hope that we would be providing a friend of the court or whatever is necessary to protect those 1,200 jobs. Because, these are people that work hard for our kids each and every day. And we want to make sure that these reckless cuts, reckless, ill-guided cuts that are coming down from DC do not affect our kids and the people that work here. And one last thing, what are we doing in terms of recruitment and retention. How are we doing with the recruitment numbers?
So the human resources team is hard at work. Recruitment is no longer a season in the school system. It is an effort that is year round. We have central office staff supporting the work, as well as building level staff that supports that work. We are reaching out in a variety of ways, leveraging technology, engaging and forming new partnerships on a regular basis, making sure that we're advertising, getting feedback directly from our stakeholders and people who want to apply so that we can streamline the process. We have had several job fairs. We have them in particular areas. We have them specific to the operations side of the school system, as well as the academic side. In terms of our numbers for recruitment and retention, I reported to the board a few months ago that our recruitment for teachers in year 1 to 3, we were outpacing, we exceeded our retention numbers, exceeded the retention for the state. The data was provided by the state superintendent and exceeded the national standards, and we were getting back to pre-COVID numbers. Turnover, recently I received the turnover data, and that turnover data speaks to voluntary separations as well as involuntary separations. Involuntary separations are people who pass away, unfortunately, or we terminate those employees. But just to give you a snapshot of turnover rates, over the last few years, school year 21-22 was 13%, 22-23 11%. Last year we were at 10.7%. This year to date, and the year is certainly not over yet. We're in May, and typically we'll hear about retirements and resignations within the next few months. It's a little over 5%, 5.2%. So that's where we are. We are grateful that we are one of the few school systems that met the $60,000 starting salary 2 years in advance of the requirement. So that moved us from the low middle part of the pack across 24 districts to the very top of the state. And so that's why it's incredibly important to us that we find a way to bridge a gap and move forward a compensation package that acknowledges the hard work of all members of Team BCPS. And that's what we're actively engaged in doing every single day.
Okay, well, listen, thank you so much for indulging me answering these questions. Again, that's very exciting to see that the turnover rate number go down. We invest a lot of money in, teachers and teach them our way, and we don't want to lose them. But again, I would end by, congratulating you and your team for doing, a wonderful job, and we are seeing the results. We're not just talking about it, we're seeing the results. And it's not just us saying it. When others recognize us and compare us to the state and compare us to others and give us accolades and awards, it shows the work that you're doing and your team is doing, and every member of BCPS is doing. So thank you so much, and keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Jones. Councilman Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Superintendent, for the presentation. And I had a lot of similar questions to Councilman Jones. And appreciate your responses related to recruitment and retention, engaging with the schools in my district. I'm sure across the entire county, there's always the talk about filling gaps, finding qualified teachers, and then with that same retention of folks moving through the system or nearby. So appreciate the work you've been doing on that and trying to close those gaps. I know that we're doing better than most jurisdictions when it comes to bus drivers, and we're doing much better than we were years ago. I just wanted to bring that up in terms of still engage with students, but also a critical function of making sure we're getting kids to school. And wasn't really a question. Just wanted to add that to the part about retention, recruitment, and trying to alleviate that issue that parents still have, but it's much better than it had been in the last couple of years. Question I had for you on page 9, and that the documents that we got, it was talking about budget flexibility. Very much clear that we don't have a lot of flexibility this year. But one of the things it mentioned that kind of stood out to me, and I want to give you a chance to talk about this, it referenced some potential reductions that I guess we identified as not being very impactful to students. They referenced BCPS TV and potentially eliminating it. I think that is a direct impact on students, and I want to give you a chance to talk about what they do. I've had the one. It's been a long time since I was in BCPS, Baltimore County Public Schools, but as a student at Sudbrook, we engaged with the system. I've been out as an opportunity as a state legislator, then as a councilman. I know that the work that they do. I just wanted to give you a chance to kind of talk about why it's important, because I think you would agree too, the impact that it has for students and for parents is much more than just the dollar amount that's assigned to it.
Absolutely. Thank you. One of the things that we're extremely committed to is communication to members of Team BCPS. We heard loud and clear. It was part of the efficiency study that Baltimore County Public Schools needed a strategic communication plan. Right now, I receive a lot of feedback about the number of messages that people receive. It is truly a fabric of our work and our expectation that we're communicating. And so people hear BCPS TV and probably think that their work is creating videos. They do so much more than that. As a small but mighty team, they work on improving accessibility for all members of Team BCPS. So when people can't actually face-to-face attend meetings, and there are live streams and things happening on YouTube and social meetings, it is BCPS TV that is doing that. They, are there for all of the Board of Education meetings, any special events, all of the community conversations that I have throughout the year, media availability, all of the boundary studies, graduation, and the list goes on and on. But they also work directly on ways to enhance parent, staff, and community engagement. They create video series. They are responsible for our website to keep, provide information for the website to keep our community informed. They provide feedback. They are part of that recruitment team in terms of the recruitment videos, spotlighting Why I Teach, which is a very powerful series that we have where teachers across the system are sharing with each other, but most importantly, sharing with people considering making Baltimore County Public Schools their place of employment, why they teach here, and what they receive as members of our teaching community. They participate in groundbreakings, ribbon cuttings, mental health outreach. They reach students directly. They have interns, and our students learn from them. They work with different activities that we have. And lastly, I would share that they truly work to enhance central office collaboration, that all of the divisions, making sure that there is a space and a time for the divisions to come together to make collaborative decisions that are in the best interest of Baltimore County Public Schools as a whole. That is part of their work, making sure that our communication is clear, it is ongoing, it reaches multiple audiences, and that we're just responding to the needs of our stakeholders in multiple languages and in multiple modalities. So thank you for the opportunity to highlight the work of a very important but small team.
And I appreciate you taking some time to explain it to everybody as well. I wanted to also ask, but also thank your team for working with my folks. We had a situation at a elementary school where the field did not meet the standard to be handed over to Baltimore County Rec and Parks. And working together with you all, working together with Rec and Parks, we were able to bridge a gap. I don't want to say a communication gap, but just there was a little bit of push and pull over whose responsibility was what. One of the recommendations that are talked about, not recommendations, the budget flexibility things was talking about how there's a bit of redundancy or there's similar departments from Baltimore County government and BCPS that do the same thing. So this seems like the best time during a tough budget year to talk about this. And I know that you and I have had a similar conversation. I know I've talked about with individual departments. You are your own entity. You need to be independent. But that also means we also have resources where it's not so much of a you're here and when we're here or you're here and there, but coming together to the table at the same level saying, hey, we could have saved ourselves $200,000 on a field if we would have just figured it out when we were putting it in. Just, hey, whoa, Rec and Parks, does this meet your standards? Oh, it doesn't? Okay, whoa, we got to figure that out beforehand because then we had to spend money on the back end. That's just an example and not a criticism. I just was wondering if there is talk about how we can have those collaborations, conversations with departments that are doing similar work, especially when there is a shared agreement between maintenance and an operation. Just so you're, hey, buddy, sorry, my son just came in. Hey, pal.
No, certainly appreciate that comment. And as you said, during tight fiscal times, this is our opportunity to engage as much as we can with each other. We meet regularly with the county executive team and our team, and we talk about all of our projects, updates, and opportunities for us to expand. We're certainly open to any of those opportunities moving forward. I know that space is limited on the county government side. We've worked through a few issues there, as you know, well as space is limited here. But in the instance, you know, or the example that you provide in terms of the field, that's a great opportunity for us to have those conversations. And I think last year we put a system in place to really be proactive around that, how our groups meet during the planning and the design phase and go back and forth. Director of Park and Recs has been a great partner, and I know speaks to Dr. Grimm on a regular basis from the outset, so we can make sure that more of that is happening. Certainly invite council members if you run into any instance in the same way that you reached out to us, please don't hesitate to reach out to us so we can connect our teams with each other.
And last question, Mr. Chairman, if you allow me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've had an opportunity to go to a number of career fairs, and I'm being specific to high school, I won't speak for middle or elementary. And obviously the question comes up like, what do you do? And I'm like, I'm your council person. And like, what does that mean? And explaining how past legislation, we try to fix problems. Folks come to us with issues, and either we can try and change something legislatively or try and help advocate for a change or help them advocate for a change. So when I bring up the question, like, is there, like, if there was something in your school that you would like to fix, what would be something you'd fix? Every single student that I brought that question up to, they like to fix the food. They complain. And I figured now we're at the budget process. I know it's about contracts. And I know I just want to bring it to your attention that unilaterally the same answer to that question from high school students has been food. If somebody,
I could have said it for you. I could have said it for you. Their complaints are, there's not enough seasoning, the portions are too small. And I explained to them, because I meet with them as well. And I explained to them that there are federal guidelines in terms of what ingredients we can put in the food, as well as the portion sizes. I will give, highlight the work of Jamie Hetzler, our Director of Food and Nutrition, who has made it her personal mission to make the students love the food. When we engage with different vendors and there's tastings, she does those at high schools and middle schools where the students get to actually weigh in and share if something, is appealing to them or not. But I have heard them message received. They would like more salt, and they would like, different kind of offerings and certain things that are fried and et cetera that we simply cannot do as a public schools. But we are working diligently to make sure that when what we can provide, is appealing to all of them. So certainly a work in progress. Thank you.
Thank you for your answers. Appreciate your work. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councilman Young. Councilman Jones? I think you're on mute, Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was thinking maybe those standards will be thrown away soon. So all sorts of other regulations seem to be going down the tube. But anyway, listen, I guess when the Councilman Young brought up the bus drivers and buses, and I just wanted to go back down memory lane just to sort of show people the type of person you are prior to becoming the superintendent. I remember reaching out to Brian Epps and asked him to put some bus drivers together, and we sat down and they hit me with all of these recommendations for improvement. And I remember taking those recommendations to you, and instead of saying no, you said, let me see what I can do. And sure enough, you know, you implemented those recommendations. And now today we don't have a problem. But that's the type of person you are. So I guess when Councilman Young talked about the bus drivers, it reminded me of, we're not having problems like others, not by chance. We're not having problems like others because of the work that you and your team have been doing. So thank you.
Thank you. And I thank all of our bus drivers in attendance for, they're doing great work every single day, moving 80,000 students inside of our county and outside safely. Not perfect, but a lot better. And so we're grateful for that.
All right, Councilman Marks.
Thank you very much.
Oh, there you go.
Dr. Rogers, thank you for the description of BCPS TV, which I certainly don't have any plans to cut, despite what you may have been told by someone. I just want to say thank you for your outreach to the teachers unions. I am a member of the Harford County Teachers Union, and I know that's very important to have that dialogue. And I think it has helped us get to a point where maybe it's not where everyone wants to be, but we've advanced, right? We've made some progress, and I just wanted to thank you for that dialogue. It's critically important.
I really appreciate that. It's important that we recognize all their work and do everything that we can. And so when we say that to them, that we know that we have tried everything that we can to give them as much as possible. And so I am grateful for the partnership across agencies and for the progress that we're making to that end.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Mike, you're muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Councilman Ketch.
Oh, thank you
I'm
very
sitting
much.
here talking to myself.
You're talking to yourself.
I was talking to myself on mute. Sorry.
Did you answer yourself while you were
I
talking?
did. I
Oh,
did,
good,
and
good.
I said you came out of nowhere.
Yes. Okay. I thought the statement, Dr. Rogers, you made about food service, that the goal of the head of food services to make students enjoy the food. I think of you hear from people when I was growing up, my mother and father made me sit at the table until I ate everything. So you really can't use that strategy, right?
We cannot.
You can. So, and then you hear of people who took the food they don't like and kind of hid it elsewhere. So you know that's not going to work. Absolutely. But I appreciate the efforts you're making in the cafeteria. I know that when I was a teacher and my wife, we of course had cafeteria duty, and I can remember students deep sixing all their food. They'd walk out of the food line and just dump it all, which was a real shame. And I'm glad that you're trying to make the food tasty. I wanted to talk with you, following up on Councilman Marks, with the. I know you've gotten correspondence. We sure have from teachers regarding the 3-year contract. You are in the middle of negotiations with the unions, is that correct?
So official negotiations will open after the adoption of the county council budget. So the,
Oh,
I'm sorry.
oh, okay. No, go ahead.
So there have been initial conversation with the budget teams, but the official negotiations have not yet started.
Do you have any idea how much money it would take to fulfill the conditions of that 3-year contract? Additional funds, in other words.
So the original contract for all, or the year 2 compensation package is $55.6 million. 60.4, I believe, is the total amount with fringes. The placeholder, which the county auditors reported on for compensation, was a little more than 17 or 19. And so the difference between the two would be the amount to close to fund starting July 1st. So that is roughly 30-some million dollars. Mr. Tantliff or Mr. Saris, if you can correct me or back my math or be a little more precise. That's if we're talking about full year 2 in on July 1.
Hi. Actually, versus what's in the budget, there's, including fringes, we'd need about 41.3 million more to do the entire contract for the full year, beginning July 1st. And the superintendent has got an agreement from the county to use 3.7 million that came in above what's in the CE's budget for state revenue. So 41.3 million minus the 3.7 we have, that would be the definitive amount to get us from here to the full year contract.
So you would subtract the extra money from the state from the 41 million, is that
correct? So so that'd be 38 million.
38 million, okay. And so when the budget is approved, then the negotiations will begin.
Correct.
Correct.
Correct. And so it's also important. I did share a message with the all of our lawmaker partners that I've shared with members of Team BCPS last Friday, and that was reaffirming our commitment to working line by line to identify any and all opportunities for us to bridge the gap in a way that, while $40 million is probably not probable, but to bridge it in such a way that we are recognizing the commitment to a year 2 compensation package and honoring all of our hardworking employees. And so we are slowly but surely finding additional reductions and additional areas not impacting the schoolhouse to work to close that gap. And so I am cautiously optimistic that I will have an update for everyone by the very beginning of next week, because this is very important to our staff members. All of them work really hard, and we really want to do everything in our power to make this happen for them.
I want to express my appreciation for all the efforts you're making to try to identify areas where funds can be saved. It's obviously not a good situation where you have agreed to a contract and find that in a situation where it can't be funded. I mean, we all know that teaching is very challenging, to say the least, very challenging. And everything must be done to support our teachers and the supporting staff in our schools. And what, for the third year of the contract, I assume we're in the same position?
Well, I think if we are able to bridge the gap in a meaningful way, one of the things that we will do is stand up an impact team to see the impact, but we will also do some work on the front end, and, you know, pending the same level of funding for the upcoming year, we would plan to be able to repeat, you know, wherever we land now. And so, you know, that's why it's so critical that we do this tedious work. I also appreciate your recognition of the teachers and support staff, and would want to add that the research is clear. 25% of student achievement gains are due to the work of school leadership, of principals and assistant principals. And I would be remiss if I didn't talk about all of the other people that do this work and really make it a school before students even get to school, and sometimes they don't see them, including the bus drivers that drive our 80,000 students to and from school, the people who make sure that the facilities are ready, who tend to the emergencies, IT, so students can have access, human resources, etc. Really, all of our employees have really stepped up their commitment to Team BCPS, particularly to our students, and to making sure that we are efficient and that we are responding to our stakeholders. And this is the right thing to do for us to figure out a way to close this gap. And so that is exactly what we're focused on, making sure that we find a way to do this on behalf of our staff members.
I want to thank you so much. That is very reassuring, and you're so right about the everyone in the school is important to the success of the school, and you know, you can visit a school and you can tell almost immediately what the environment is, and whether or not people are working together for the good of the students. And of course, that goes to the leadership, etc. So I thank you for your efforts to facilitate schools that are student-centered and that have the strategy in place to achieve success. I appreciate it so much, and appreciate the job you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Ketch. I don't know the order. Councilman Marks, I think your hand was up first, and then Councilman Patoka.
No, I'm done.
Okay, Councilman Patoka. You're on mute, Councilman Patoka.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Dr. Rogers, for your presentation. I had a similar line of questions as Councilman Ketch. So I appreciate Councilman Ketch you bringing some of the issues that I was thinking about to the discussion. So it sounds like we're making progress in our interactions with the unions. And go ahead.
I'm sorry. So I was going to say, you know, we're not formally in negotiations, but we're making progress on our end to close that gap, so that when it comes time for formal negotiations, pending the budget, pending county council approval, and we really need full approval on the funds that are there, we would not be in a place to close any kind of gap if we lost any further funds. That we are truly cautiously optimistic, but very hopeful that we're going to end up in a place that honors our hardworking staff members.
I see. Thank you. And are we talking about all 5 unions or a specific union?
We're talking about everyone that makes Baltimore County a productive place and a place that is making progress. So all 5 unions.
Gotcha. Okay. I have a similar experience to Councilman Jones when he met with the bus drivers. I've been meeting, I've had a series of meetings with the cafeteria workers, and they were sharing some of the experiences they have there. Many feel that they're putting a lot of time in, and they are preparing foods. And it sounded like from what your discussion earlier, this is in line with the federal guidelines. But they were a little discouraged that they spend a lot of time preparing foods that at the end of the lunch period gets thrown away because it's fresh vegetables and things I know that are important, but at the end of the day, it's not getting eaten. And so I know it's a challenge. I just wonder if there's a happy medium where we can find foods that actually the kids will eat. And I think, I'm sorry, Councilman Young, who was talking about the discussion of foods that the kids don't like them.
Yeah, so I mean, we're working on making sure that the food are definitely more appealing. We've added fresh fruits and vegetables, salads, healthy burritos and salads of that nature, which are, we even have the bento boxes that are very popular with our students to mitigate some of that waste. We have created share tables in our I'm sorry?
What did you say was popular?
Bento boxes. So the same bento boxes that you can buy at a vendor, we have them in our cafeteria. Students like those. We have created share tables, and that's our effort to make sure that if a student knows that they've taken something and they're not going to eat it, they put it on the share table, and another student can take that. There are some guidelines that make it difficult for us to take everything that's not being consumed and donate it, which of course in an ideal world is where we would like to be, but we continue to partner with across agencies to find out what we can do about that, as well as the guidelines that require students to take certain things off of the line if they're receiving a free lunch. So we're working on that part as well, because we want to reduce waste, particularly when we know that food insecurity is a real issue for many people in the county.
Sure. Some of the cafeteria workers shared with me, and I'll talk with you offline about this. Is really probably not appropriate for a budget hearing, but just related to some of the rigid work conditions. I'll talk to you about that offline rather than belabor it at this budget hearing. So thank you, Dr. Rogers. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilman Patoka, Dr. Rogers. Any other questions or comments before we wrap up for the day? None? All right. Well, have a great evening, everyone. We have deliberations tomorrow for the council on Friday, so we're back at it again tomorrow.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to note as a programming note that deliberation will also be virtual.
Yes. And it starts at noon, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And then the budget adoption is next Thursday, a week from today, May 22nd at 3 p.m. It's been at 10 a.m. in past years. It is at 3 p.m. next week.
Okay.
And that will be in person, as well as, streaming via WebEx.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Appreciate everyone being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks, guys.